Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. I'm Zack Carpenter. With me as always is Tim Verghese. Tim, 15 practices down, fall camp, and one more to go Saturday, tomorrow in their second final scrimmage, or maybe semantically I think it's fall camp's essentially wrapping up, and then they have 2 more weeks of practice. I'm not sure what differentiates between fall camp and regular season practice, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Nebraska we're inching closer and closer to the season. I mean, I looked at the calendar, like the fall practice calendar, and I see August 6th. It's already August 16th. We have 2 more weeks to go as of tomorrow. So the team is I think inching closer, because Marcus Satterfield talked today after the practice that they're not installing yet, but they're doing situational stuff, like putting in 2-minute.
We can definitely feel it's getting closer. We're seemingly past the install and seemingly into a lot of more into we're prepping for UTEP.
Yep.
And again, true situational, like goal line, red zone, 3rd and long, those type of 4th and long type situations.
Yeah, it's really it's like the whole summer there's nothing. I mean, for you it's a lot. I mean, it's recruiting, but we slowly get there, and then boom, it's like here out of nowhere. It feels like a lot all at once, everything all at once. And now we're here, and they have their second and final scrimmage tomorrow, and we had an open practice period today. So today was the 3rd and final open practice window for the media. There was the Big Red preview at Memorial Stadium, where we could watch the entire practice, but about 20 minutes though of open window for like photo ops and everything. Last Friday we had a extended like 25 or so minute open window, and today we had like 15, 20 roundabout, and the rest of the practices all the way up to UTEP will be closed. So I just wanted to recap with you here, just since it's rapid recap, we're not going to dive super deep into it, but first thing that comes to mind when I say what's the one non-quarterback thing that you notice that sticks out to you through these open windows, what would you say?
I mean, it's somewhat quarterback adjacent, but just the offense in general. Obviously, I wasn't here for practices last summer, but the practices this year and just the vision, the offense seems to have an identity this year. Just as a whole, the offense seems to have an identity and also seems to have depth. And that's not just obviously a quarterback. They've got some options, but like running back, you've got 3-4 guys. They're trying to find 3 guys, and it's a challenge because there's 4 or 5 guys contending for that now. Wide receiver, just off camera, we were trying to list off, hey, who's these first 6 receivers coming off the bench, and it's a toss up there for that number 6 spot.
Yeah, because you get through the first 5, and you're like boom, 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 and that like no doubters, I think, and then it's like that's 6, you think. But maybe
it's a couple. There's a couple options now, so they've got some options now, and there's a couple I think a big issue last year is on paper, so much had to hit right for the offense to work.
And it didn't.
And it didn't. None of it did. But this year, it's like, okay, all right, the wide receivers are just dealing with some drops. Okay, you've got Thomas Fidone in the running game to lean on. You've got Carter Nelson and the running game to kind of lean on. It's like, okay, we're matched up against some bigger corners today. Okay, they're kind of neutralizing our big outside receivers. Okay, it's Jalen Lloyd and Ja'Cory Barney. We're just going to feast on the inside. You've got some options. You can counter whatever the defense throws at you. And again, at the O-line, obviously there's a big question now with Teddy out for the year. But you're seeing names stepping up. You're seeing Turner, seemingly stepping up. You're seeing Micah Mazuka obviously on the inside, but he's, where we were talking about him in the spring of just like, is this guy going to get with the program to? He's probably going to start now. And now he's probably going to start or very much play a lot of rotational minutes at that guard spot.
I thought it was pretty clear that from the first time that he entered since he transferred from Florida into the program, it was pretty clear that Micah Mazuka is their best offensive lineman. He's their most pro
ready.
Pro ready. He's their best pro prospect. I think it was distinctly clear on the O-line, and even though there were issues that Rule said about him sort of coming here and transitioning to the culture and elevating to where everyone was at, he still started the spring game. He was with the ones out there with Ben Scott and Dylan and all those guys. I was never really worried about him as a stalwart on that offensive line, because again, I think he's their best offensive lineman. But like you said, there's the depth on the offensive line. There's depth to an extent, and I think
there's depth on the interior
depth,
for sure.
Yeah.
That my thing, I'm issue, and I think the biggest question now with the offense is just one, will it all click? But two, yes, that left tackle spot kind of with Teddy gone, is it with Teddy gone, is it going to be Turner? We've seen Grant Katula up there.
Gunnar
Katula. Grant Seagren that's what I'm saying. But Seagren he's kind of earned some praise as well. You know, Tyler Knack's another one that we've heard about like throughout the offseason as well. So they've got some options. It's just what can these guys do? You know, can they step up and with Turner, you know, can he have that leap forward that Bryce Benhart had last year? You know, can it finally come together for him? Because remember, he was a highly touted recruit coming out. We just have not seen it come together for him, despite the many snaps he's played at this point in his career.
We talked on a recent Rapid Recap, the Outland Trophy preseason watch list for best offensive lineman in the country came out like 2 minutes before we hopped on here, and Bryce Benhart is on that watch list. It's like if you would have told us that this time last year, you slapped us in the face, like tried to knock some sense into us. But then you see the type of year he had. Can, like you said, Turner have that type of year? I keep forgetting, I think last year Teddy was not the starter until midseason when Turner got hurt. When he went down for the season, Teddy stepped in as a starter. He played really well, and I think, on the grading scale, they played about the same amount of snaps, about the same amount of passing play snaps, and they graded about like roughly the same. Like I don't think one was significantly worse than the other. But Teddy was hurt. He was coming off his most recent injury going into last year, and then they slowly and steadily brought him along, and then he showed that improvement. And I think you have to think optimistically that Turner can show that type of improvement as well, or you're going to have to get that big extra leap from Gunnar Katula. And when I think about practice observations, like that's one of the first things that comes to mind. Like we were talking non-quarterback, is I was taking photos of the O-line at the second open practice last Friday, and I sort of did a double take because I thought at Gunnar Katula he was repping as the number one left tackle, because Turner wasn't practicing. I don't think at that point. He had just had the ankle injury the last week, so kind of, I guess, taking it a little easy with him. But he looks good. Gunnar Katula looks good physically. Noticeably bigger, stronger, more athletic, as you would expect going into year two. Much different than he was obviously coming in as a freshman. But that was one of the things I noticed in the receivers, like we alluded to. I just think they look. It's almost not an afterthought, but it's almost like a given. Like, yeah, they're going to be a lot better than last year, and for good reason. You bring in Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nair, the type of physical, athletic
guys that have done it before.
And guys who have done proven players. Even though Nair, it's been a couple of years since he's done it because of obviously the ACL injury. I wrote about this recently. You're supposed to wait till the year after when it comes to significant knee injuries. Like Isaiah Nair tore his ACL during fall camp at Texas in 2022, comes back for 2023, and he had played only 8 snaps and had 1 catch for I think like 14 yards all season, playing in a very deep Texas
very deep wide receiver room.
Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and the tight end Jatavian Sanders.
And Jordan Whittington. Yes, all 4 got drafted.
Yes. Whittington, Worthy was first round, Mitchell second, Sanders was 4th round, Whittington 6th, and he's blowing up currently over the last week after the Rams' first preseason game. And all is to say, like, he was in a loaded room, coming off a torn ACL, and you're supposed, like, with significant knee injuries, the year after, so if he hurt it in 22, coming into 2024, this is the year. This is a pivotal year for him.
And it's the same reason for optimism with Thomas Fidone as well, because for him, it's 2 years removed as well, and that's why you hear the staff talk about he's moving faster. He's moving like he did in high school again. He's got some burst to him, and he's bigger now.
Last year he had a really good, pretty strong year. That was 2 years after his first ACL tear. And now it's like 2 years removed from the.
You're right.
The
he's well removed at this point, and kind of is returning to that form that had him ranked as the number 1 tight end coming out of high school, and was the reason there was a lot of excitement around him as well. And I think again that's another one that's kind of an afterthought in terms of the offense, but Marcus Satterfield is both the offensive coordinator and the tight ends coach, and you figure they're going to be involved. And if Fidone does have this, like, has taken this step, it should look good. It should look like he should be like a really featured key part of this offense.
Yeah, exactly. Him and Nate Borgature is one of the more unheralded guys. I mean, Rule called Nate Borgature, and I think he said Luke Lindenmeyer were the unsung heroes back last month at Big Ten Media Days, unsung heroes of the offense. But they're going to have the tight ends involved, and I hear what you're saying. Like, Fidone's almost an afterthought because there's all these new pieces, these new exciting, shiny toys that you're going to get to use in the offense this year that you kind of forget. Oh yeah, he could be a mainstay. I mean, the cliche phrase is a tight end is a quarterback's best friend, and especially a first-year college quarterback starting quarterback is their best friend. So we'll see on the tight end situation, but it's pretty clear, especially because of the continuity. Those were the top three in the rotation last year. Going to have the same ones back, but we go back to Banks, Nair, and then, like you said, the wide receiver rotation. You run through them. It's like in some order in the top six, because you're always looking for round 6 in that rotation. Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nair, Jalen Lloyd, Ja'Cory Barney. Who was the fifth one?
Alex
Bullock. And then it's like you get to the 6th, it's like Malachi Coleman, you figure is going to be in there, like
somewhere in there, good pass block good blocker
in that top 6, and then it's like, oh, there's also like Keelan Smith is coming along. Carter Nelson's another guy. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda is in that mix. So, when you have those type of questions and when those discussion points and it's fun to talk about, then that's a good sign, especially when you have the new incoming talents, whether it's a transfer or a guy like Carter Nelson.
Yeah, for sure. And with Nelson, I think it's just going to be a thing of he was a summer enrollee, which could have potentially like lengthened his runway to get on the field. But man, just watching him run around out there, he's already put on some good weight, looks the part running around. Like, it's just going to be hard to leave him off the field. They have an idea of what they want to do with him. Oh, we didn't even talk about the receivers. Bonner.
Yeah.
Bonner's very much in that mix as well.
That's kind of a point. He's like a power slot.
Right, and that's pretty much like, that's the whole thing. Is like you see Bonner and what they do with him, and it feels like that's the vision for what Carter Nelson is going to be in this offense down the line. That could be by like 3-4 games into the year where you're like, okay, Carter Nelson, the snap count's increasing, and you're seeing, maybe some guys' snap counts decreasing. It's just, there's a lot of names they have to get on the field, but it's not a bad problem to have. Again, like this time last year, they would have loved to have 7-8 pass catching options. Now they have it. Like they have depth there where it's like, okay, a couple guys go down.
Because we saw that last year. Like if they would have had this depth last year, I'm not sure if receiver would have been as much of an issue. And you also had last year none of the freshman receivers coming in 2023, they were all mid-year enrollees. Right. They didn't have spring ball and that extra time of development, and then they had to get thrust into those roles. And now, I think you had a couple spring or winter enrollees in that group. I think it was Keelan Smith and Ja'Cory Barney was a spring, right?
Barney was spring.
He was in the spring game. Yes. What am I talking about? Yes. So you had a couple guys.
So they had a couple. Yes, they had a couple like that had that time. But yeah, like Nelson's one that came in the summer. He's hit the ground running. We saw him today. Like him and Dylan are starting to build that chemistry. You saw Dylan kind of yelling at him a little bit to run the route better, which a testament to where Dylan's at leadership-wise, and also again Carter's still coming along. But clearly that Dylan wants Carter to be a guy for him.
You saw it in the Polynesian Bowl. I have a column I've written since the day after the Polynesian Bowl about Dylan. And the first part of it is about Dylan and Carter's connection, because I'm not going to spoil the column. I've been holding it, and I don't know if I'm not going to take anything out. I might have a couple additions, but like I'm going to publish that sometime. I'm just kind of been like, this is the feeling I have about Dylan as a starting quarterback, and Carter Nelson a little bit too, where they form that sort of that unspoken chemistry on the field where it's like, play breaks down and like it's just natural, where you're not going to be talking about necessarily in the huddle like, hey, if he does this, you do that. It's just sort of a feel. I think they both have realized like they both have a really good natural feel for the game.
Right, and Nebraska might not need that connection this year because Dylan has that right now with Banks and Neor, and he's developing with Neor, but he for sure seems to have that with Banks early on. Is developing that connection with Lloyd as well. So they've got options where it's like, okay, Carter, You're coming from 8-man football. We can ease you into this. We don't need to like thrust you out there. We don't need you out there. Which this time last year they would have needed Carter Nelson on the field. That would have been like we just need this type of talent on the field. We need to figure out.
No doubt gotten in there.
Yep, and they need to figure out how to get him the ball. But yeah, I mean, Carter won't be the only mid-year enrollee, I don't think, that's going to play a good bit this year. Keona Davis has gotten a lot of buzz. Probably one of the more heralded fall camp members, or just in general.
He's part of the overhype team. Like, he's the captain of the not overhype, but the Husker hype train. He's
Husker hype train for sure.
Not that he wanted to be. He was given that title involuntarily.
But yeah, man, came in at 235 pounds is what they brought him in at, or what he was listed at out of high school. And then you've got the coaching staff saying he's up to 270 now, and would continue to add some weight. Certainly looks that on the field is going to work into that rotation by pretty much everyone we've talked to who's mentioned Keona Davis is like, oh, that's a guy that they're going to have to get on the field. It doesn't sound like he's going to be limited in his snap count. He's going to have every opportunity to step up on the field. And then Amari Sanders.
He's like Cam Lenhart last year, like coming in, him and the other, there's another, Prince, I swear there's another interior
Riley
guy.
Van Poppel as well.
Yeah, Riley Van Poppel. So, but Cam Lenhart was he got the most snaps early on. I mean, he had the injury like week 3. Prince will start getting more snaps around that Northwestern game and broke out Illinois and Northwestern. But Keona Davis, he could be that this year where we see him get a lot of snaps. And I mean, he came from South Point Catholic in Arizona, powerhouse program, same high school as Bijan Robinson is the first name that comes to mind. And when he flipped from Washington that late, and you start hearing about him, reading about him, watching his tape, it's like, if he adds strength in the summer when he comes in here, he could be a dude who gets some snaps early on. I mean, play those 4 games and make an impact in those 4 games. And maybe he winds up not redshirting. I don't know. It's a deep Nebraska defensive line, deep and veteran, but just wanted to say that about just the background on Keona. But you talked about another guy, Amari Sanders.
Yeah, Amari Sanders, another one who, like, again, if we're talking about Husker hype train, that the last 3 weeks it's been him, and I would say the other one, Sierra Wright, since coming into those 2 DB additions. But Sanders, a plus-size DB, about 6'1", a little north of that, I think, right now. Rangy frame, moves really well. I wrote up an observations piece just on some of these mid-year enrollees. You can go read that right now over at Inside Nebraska. But talking about him, that's right. And right now, and he's a guy that's just sticky in coverage, And you think back to him in high school. This is a guy that's from South Florida, played against like Jeremiah Smith and Josiah Trader and like Jalen Brown, like some of the top receivers who are now littered across the college football, like all of these top college football teams. He played against them in high school, so he's not used to. He's coming to Nebraska, and this isn't like Caleb Benning coming to Nebraska, and like the best competition he's faced are like Isaiah McMorris and David Hall. This is a guy that's come into practice, and his best competition are guys that are going to start.
No knock against those guys.
No knock against those guys at all, but it's just this is a guy that's come into camp having practiced against Power 5 players
over and over
for years on years, and seen it all, like seen 6'4" Jeremiah Smith, seen 5'11" Jalen Brown, like seen these guys of all different sizes with all different types of traits, knows what he's looking for, sticks. We saw a couple one-on-one just wide receivers and DBs going back one-on-one today, and he's holding his own against Isaiah Neyor, and then he's holding his own against Jalen Lloyd. It's like no matter what it looks like for him, he's able to hold his own. A pure cover corner. I think he's slight of frame. I think something you saw today, Quinn Clark kind of pushed him off his spot, just straight up, just like knocked him down with his long arms, and that's something with Sanders, who's 175, listed as 175. Just going to need to add some muscle before he's truly ready to contribute in the run game. I think you see him early on kind of play that field corner, just way out there. And like they kind of trust
with the heavy passing offense.
Yeah, and you kind of trust, you have a safety or two overhanging above him early on. But that's a guy that his runway's a little long, but he's going to be on the field and very much factors into that cornerback 2 rotation, which that's still a big question for all of us heading into this final stretch.
And real quick, I did want to say about Caleb Benning. I mean, he didn't practice against those Florida guys, but I don't think he meant it this way.
Not at all.
I think he could be. I think Caleb Benning could still get some.
Benning absolutely. Yes.
He looks physically different, noticeably different. At least, I mean, I saw him for 10 seconds in the last Friday's open practice, but he looks stronger. Like he looks.
He had and I noted it as well. He had a good play. We had a brief scrimmage period when we walked into practice, and he had a nice little pass breakup against, I forget who it was against the number 1 offense, but a nice little pass breakup. And he's been working with that number 2 defense, very much figures to factor into that
depth,
safety rotation. Should see the field this year as well.
Yeah, and you talk about the other point I was going to make is Dwight Boodle is another guy, because you mentioned Jeremiah Smith and Josiah. How do you say his name?
Josiah Trader.
Josiah. I have never been able to get that, and I just say Josiah. So I had no idea.
These people don't know who I'm talking about. He's a wide receiver. Yes, a freshman wide receiver at Miami.
Miami now, because it was Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate. All 3 of those actually are Ohio State. They were all 5 stars and or had either a number 1 or number 2 receiver in their class, along with Trader, who is either a 5-star. He was a 5-star at one point and top 10 overall player in the class. Dwight Boodle was on their 7-on-7 team. All 4 of those guys were on. All 4 of those receivers were on the same 7-on-7 team, and Boodle was a cornerback and nickel in that spot, and so he's battle tested. He has game experience from last year a little bit before he got hurt against Northern Illinois, 3rd game of the season. So he's another guy who could factor into that CB2 spot, which is the thing we keep talking about, I think, but it is that last mystery box. What are we going to get?
Because this defense, again, has very, very lofty goals, and in order, you have to be a lockdown defense. And Steve and I have talked about this plenty, and you and I have talked about this plenty, but again, we keep talking about that Colorado game. Whoever that spot is right now, regardless, whoever's opposite Tommi Hill, that guy's going to get picked on. We know that. That guy needs to be ready, because that guy's going to be picked on because that's the least experienced member of the secondary.
Yeah, it could be. We asked Tony White this week, who's been repping the most at that number 2 cornerback spot, and he started off the conversation, and he said in order, not that it matters, he rattles off the list, first guys that come to mind, it was Dwight Boodle, Sierra Wright, and Jeremiah Charles, and Charles had that shoulder injury last in the scrimmage, but minor shoulder injury, but and then Marquise Buford was repping as one of those top guys moving from safety to corner, which was notable during the Big Red preview, where Tommy was held out of that practice, and it's Buford's over there and Jeremiah Charles is over there. So are these the 2-3 guys?
And then today we saw the number 1 defense, and opposite Tommy was Buford again today. So Buford again, in the times we've seen the number 1 defense out there, Buford's been out there with them at the cornerback spot.
And then you got Sierra Wright, Jalen Lloyd. Steve asked Jalen Lloyd, who's the number 1 corner you have the most difficult time with, or the most fun matching up against in practice, team, or those one-on-one drills, and he said Sierra Wright. So you got 3 or 4 guys there. And Larry Tarver's a guy we don't mention. I heard he was making progress, and then he got hurt.
He's just been in and out. He's been pretty much every time we've seen him, he's been in a yellow jersey, so we don't even know what they have there, but he's made physical strides where he doesn't look like a guy that just came from high school. Doesn't look like a freshman at all. Looks like he's obviously added some good mass. Looks the part physically, just we need to see it on the field with him. And Sierra looks the part, and just in the sense of this is a former top 100 recruit, and he moves like it. Very light on his feet, changes direction really well. Another one that's just extremely sticky in coverage. The big question with him dating back to USC is just physicality. How much can he contribute in the run game? He had some bad tackling fundamentals at USC and just did not look like he wanted to play physical football at USC. So it's more of a matter of, and here you watch him play, it's he's got his ears pinned back a little bit, as much as you can as a corner, but he's got his ears pinned back. He's playing fast, he's playing loose, he's willing to get a little physical. So we'll see if these bad habits, that's my biggest question with him, I think, is just will the bad habits that, were not drilled into him, but over 2-3 years at USC, it just kind of become routine for him. Are those drilled out of him, or does it come game day and he's kind of regressing back into those bad habits? Or has Nebraska gotten him to a point where they're getting the most out of the clear talent that is there? It's just, I do have questions about putting it all together,
Yeah, hell of an actor though, but we see that about Heinrich Harburg. Will he revert back to what they know when the live bullets are flying? I always when we talk about quarterback motions or these things as in general, I think of Tim Tebow, where they completely retooled his throwing motion for the NFL, and then as soon as
he's on the
preseason he's doing it, he's the new motion, but then once the actual in-season games that really count, really matter. Once those start, you revert back to what you know, and Heinrich talked about that. Reverting back to what you know a lot of times, like got to kind of work on that and instill it into your brain to be reactionary to do it. So maybe I don't know if one fall camp is going to be enough for Sierra Wright in that regard, but I mean, you got John Butler, you got an NFL guy, instilling that in you, an intense guy. Maybe he can pull that off. Amari Sanders and Larry Tarver were those were two, along with Vincent Shavers Jr. Those were the Florida Three, whatever cool nickname that we can still come up with. All three flipped on signing day. Two of them flipped, officially flipped. Shavers officially flipped from Miami to Nebraska, and Tarver from Maryland to Nebraska on signing day. Sanders just committed and signed. So got all three of those guys, if healthy, can make an impact. Shavers is a guy we've talked about a lot. He's another first year guy who's
first team on the Husker hype train.
Yeah, it's co-captains are Keona Davis, other than Dylan. Dylan's the general manager of it, the head coach of it, and then Keona Davis and Vincent Shavers Jr. are co-captains. So it's exciting though, man. There's a lot of
and I'll say this too about the
program.
cornerback 2 spot. Blyhill's working back, like outside of the green jersey. He's back in full contact. And he was he was in a red jersey today,
okay.
So he's moving around. He's out there, kind of in full go. It seems, at least in what we saw. So we'll see what that means in terms of how ready he is to be on the field. But he cannot be counted out of that discussion. I think just the length that he provides, the physicality in the run game, and just how well he was playing in the spring. I think all spring we talk about this hype train. Before he got injured, it was a lot of like, oh man, Nebraska's got something here in Blyhill.
Yeah.
Like they really found something here.
He would have had a whole summer to add on to, because he's pretty skinny. He still was in the spring, but he's got a whole summer to add 10 pounds or so, however much they were going to want to put on him or however much he could put on. So that's just disappointing. But I mean, he was always a long-term guy. It was always going to be 3 years to develop him. And I think he surprised the coaching staff as well. Like, I think he surprised a lot of people with his quick development. So we went a little long here today, but we hadn't jumped on one of these videos in a couple weeks, so wanted to.
It's 3 whole practices worth of discussing. We got a lot to talk about.
Exactly, but it's fun, man. It's exciting, and hopefully it leads into to some success.
Can you feel that we're ready to talk about real football? Yeah. Like we're ready to just talk about. I'm just excited to talk about.
I'm done talking about football in theory and want to do football in practice, but in practice in a game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's it for us. Again, you guys can like this video, subscribe to our Inside Nebraska YouTube channel, get all these videos and our practice highlights. We got 3 different practice highlights from all the open periods up on our YouTube channel right now. We get those dropped directly in your feed, as well as press conference videos and Tim's recruiting blitz episode that drops every Monday at our YouTube channel. And encourage you guys to go to InsideNebraska.com, subscribe to our site. You read Steve's coverage of today's presser, all our coverage from today's presser at, again, InsideNebraska.com. That's going to do it for us here. For Tim Verghese, I'm Zack Carpenter. We'll catch you guys again next time.